And yeah, in the end, you decided to partner with us. Can you maybe say 2, 3 words how you came to that decision?
Yeah, so I started looking at solutions and got aware of the offsetting principle. I mean, I was aware of that principle anyway, because other industries are already using it, like airlines, for example, where you can offset some of the CO2 emissions when you book a flight. So I really like that concept because to me, it's a great transition concept. And I think that's the key here. It's not binary. We're not going to jump to a solution tomorrow, but we need a way to get there. And so I did some research, and I believe actually you guys reached out at the time when I was doing that research. So it was a great timing, and I just really loved how transparent you are and how you very much care about tracking and making sure that when you sign up with a partner, you know exactly where does the funding go, how much plastic is collected, who's the partner locally that you're working with. And I think that's another important piece here is, there's like great intentions sometimes, but if you can't really guarantee that you're actually collecting the plastic that the company is emitting, it's again defeating their purpose, and it feels a little bit like greenwashing. And so we really wanted somebody who's thorough and who does the research and who also gives us the confidence that the work is done on the other side. And we just felt that with Cleanhub, and so we decided to partner.
Thank you very much for your trust and for the kind words. And yeah, I mean, now we can basically turn the whole thing around, and I'm happy to
Mhm.
receive some of your questions and um, explain maybe a bit more about the principle that we're following, about the things that we found,
Yes,
whatever you have
I think that that would be a great place to start. I mean, I'm curious personally how you got on this journey and why
mm,
you decided to start cleanup, but I'm also it would be interesting to listeners to better understand how does cleanup work on the other
mm,
side once you start partnering with a brand.
yeah. And maybe quick background on the journey of cleanup. We are 3 founders, which is Florin, who's leading the technology side of things. Then it's Bosse, who's mostly handling the customer contact and financials and the whole legal system, so to say. And then it's me, and I'm mostly responsible for everything that's then yeah, goes into communications, that goes into partner acquisition on the ground. And what really combines all 3 of us is that we've been working in industries before, um, which were definitely interesting. We all come from a software background, but none of us really felt that we're doing something good for the world necessarily with what we
Mm.
did. And my personal motivation in the whole thing is I grew up at the biggest lake in Germany, Lake Constance. So I was always sailing. When I was a kid, I spent a lot of time outdoors skiing and so on. And after my graduation, I started surfing, not very professionally, but passionately. I always like to say, not very good, but yeah. Then also did 2 semesters abroad, always at the ocean. And yeah, the ocean is just really dear to my heart. I'm in a very fortunate position that I got to travel a lot. And whenever you go to the more, let's say, global south, you see or you're confronted with plastic pollution, and it was always annoying in a way, and I was always asking myself like, what is the reason for this? And then we really took the time. It was a bit more than a year to really research the topic. And we went to India, we went to Sri Lanka, to different parts of the world, and talked to the people locally and really tried to understand what the problem is. And we went there with this thought in our mind: is like, okay, we just need to build like a recycling facility, and then we can take care of the problem. It's like it's a valuable good. And that unfortunately only holds true for a certain part of plastic. Um,
Mhm.
so there's certain plastics that can be recycled, and then there's certain plastics that can't be recycled. And up until that point, I didn't even know that there's more than, I don't know, one type of plastic. I always thought is like plastic is plastic, but there's like literally 1,000 different of formulas. It's a chemical product, and yeah, sometimes you mix them, like you can mix metals to form alloys.
Hmm.
And as soon as you do that with plastic, they basically become more or less unrecyclable. And that was our major finding, because if you go to India, for example, or also Indonesia, there are huge secondary markets for recycled goods. Water bottles, for example, are turned into yarn
Hmm.
for clothing. Um, and then shampoo bottles can be pretty well recycled. All the rigid
Hmm.
goods, so to say.
Right.
However, then there's the flexible packaging, the kind of material that you just can't recycle. And if you look into the numbers, the most recent study showed that more plastic is now entering the oceans than ever before. We had 11 million tons a year, metric tons, and B, 80% of that material that goes into the oceans is non-recyclable. Um,
Hmm.
and these were two facts that were really mind-boggling. And the fact why especially there's so much non-recyclable plastic going into the oceans is that this material has no value, right? If you can't recycle it, there's not going to be a use case for it. You won't find a buyer for that kind of plastic. And we said, okay, we need to make this material valuable enough that
Hmm.
someone does collect it, that it doesn't end up in the environment in the first place. And that's kind of the intervention point that we're taking. I've been talking a lot and kind of um, putting a lot of threads together. Are there any questions on that?
No, I think that this is so helpful to understand. And, I think the point that you're making around plastic and all these hundreds of different types of plastic that exist is so essential. I think there's still a lot of misconception around that. And
Mm,
I see that here in the States, especially, people just throw all kinds of plastic in one bag and hope it will just magically disappear and be
mm,
recycled. But as you're explaining, for most of it, it's not going to be the case.
mm,
And then the concept of adding value to that, because that's exactly what it is when I, as a producer, pack my bars in plastic and I don't add any value to it, there's no reason for
mm,
it to not end in the ocean or in the landfill.
exactly.
And so that touches a little bit on the principle of what you guys are doing with Cleanhub. Can you talk a little bit about how partnerships with brands work?
Mhm.
When you sign a brand on, what happens next?
Yeah. Yeah. The first thing that we do when we sign up with a brand, like in your case, we just calculate what is the plastic footprint, like what are the plastic emissions, and we take this as a benchmark and say, okay, we're going to collect the exact same equivalent in areas where it is required the most. That means in areas where there is no real waste management infrastructure in place, so to say. So there's no waste trucks coming every day. And then we have a portfolio of different collection partners, like various projects can be. We have, for example, door-to-door waste collection, which is handled by women self-help groups. We are working with recycling companies who are buying then in our name kind of multi-layer packaging from waste banks, which are like small collection points where people can bring waste and get money in return. And usually this this is exactly how the sourcing of recyclable goods works in these countries, that people go and bring their water bottles to a waste bank and then they get a bit of cash in return. And
Mm-hmm.
we kind of open the same thing for multi-layer packaging and say, okay, we're also going to pay for multi-layer packaging. Then there's technical interventions. We're working towards a bubble barrier that can be put into rivers that stops plastic before it goes into the oceans. We work with NGOs that are setting up waste collections in Indian villages, for example. And our focus really is on trying to intercept the plastic as early as possible, because plastic is a threat in the environment, no matter if it's the ocean or if it's on like in the
Mm-hmm.
woods, in the forest. And essentially, once it is in the environment, it will most likely end up in the ocean because it is lightweight. The wind's going to blow it away. Anyway, what we do is we forward the yeah, kind of the volumes to a partner. We contract the partner to collect the exact same equivalent of that non-recyclable plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And they use an app that we provide, and they need to register every single waste slip, they need to deliver digital proof of work about the things that they do. And then in the final step, we connect these collection points to safe treatment facilities where the waste can be disposed of safely, where there's no threat of ending up in the environment again. And also this handover is documented because we just want to make sure that it really reaches its destination and people don't collect the waste, get the money, and then just throw it into the river in the next moment.
Right.
So for us, it's really important to have this end-to-end tracking. And only when the waste really goes to the final treatment facility, we're going to send you on your product, on your project page, we're going to send an update that that the volumes are collected, and you can access the whole data. Like you can see every single waste slip. You will know when something was collected where, and that's how that system works.
Pretty amazing. And can you tell us a little bit what happens at the waste treatment facility? Like how is the plastic disposed of at the end?
Yeah, that's also one of these points where this non-binary thinking needs to happen, right? The thing is, all plastic, and that's maybe important to know, is made from crude oil. It's a petrol product in the end, or petrochemical product. So it does carry energy. And we have partnerships with the cement industry mostly, that can repurpose this material as fuel for their cement production, and they are replacing other fossil fuels like coal and gas with that. And there's a recent study from ETH Zurich, for example, that clearly shows that they can reduce their carbon emissions by up to 20%. So we're kind of taking a problem to solve another problem, and that's what we currently do with the waste. Again, this is we see this very much as a bridge technology. We are hoping that at some point we don't have this kind of multi-layer packaging material anymore, but that there are better packaging options around. That's obviously the most important thing that needs to be solved. While doing that, we do live in a linear economy. It is not circular. If material can't be recycled, then recycling is not an option. At the same time, there are projects that are looking into also recycling these kind of plastics. And as soon as we find the most sustainable option, we will always deliver it to the most sustainable option.
Great. I love that.
Thinking.
I have more of a general question for you around, what recent events, what's happening in the world with the pandemic. I personally feel, I don't know how it is in Germany, but here in the States, I felt like we went back a little bit because suddenly everyone was extremely worried around touching surfaces and making sure everything is packaged and using gloves, single-use gloves and single-use packaging. And we had just, for example, started introducing finally in New York City a fee for plastic bags. And so that was delayed, which is, crazy in itself that it took so long for us to even get there here in the States. But how can we continue, especially in these crazy times where people are very concerned about their health, making that connection that the environment still matters and that we need to not go backwards? Or have you felt that your experience in Europe has been different than mine here in the States?
It has unfortunately not been different. For example, all those face masks, they're in the end also plastic products wrapped in a plastic wrapper, which again it makes sense, right? It's the same thing as with the bars. It is there to protect the insides. It is there to keep it sterile. For medical applications, plastic is such a wonderful material because it really is the most hygienic thing that you can do. So, but we did see a spike in plastic consumption. Especially here in Europe, the volumes are going up and up and up. We are consuming ever more. And I think making the connection is in the end a lot about what also Lupi is doing with this approach, right? By saying like, look, we do use plastic. We have to use it. It's else we can't do it. But let's not hide the fact that we need to do something about it. Let's step up.
Hmm.
Let's take
Hmm.
responsibility as a company
Hmm.
and try to find a way how we can best deal with it. And I really think that this is um, that this goes beyond like a financial contribution, but that it also sends a signal to the market saying, look, there is a way to do responsible business. There's a way to step up.
Hmm.
And in a way, what you're doing is you're self-inflicting a tax on yourself, right? Um,
Hmm.
the way that it should be, for example, for the plastic bags. Like if a plastic
Hmm.
bag just costs 5 cents, like it does in Germany, you have to pay if you want to get a plastic bag, and people suddenly start to bring their old bag from home or whatever.
Hmm.
And
Hmm.
yeah, it's really acknowledging where we are and then looking for the solutions. That's really my opinion. And then obviously, um, I'm uh, I'm a big supporter of science, and I think
Hmm.
packaging is such a big problem. There will be solutions. It's not very clear yet which ones those are going to be, but there's amazing work going on.
Absolutely. And I think especially seeing some of the big CPG companies here in the States that are starting to be more dedicated to finding solutions for that, because another hurdle that a small company like us faces is that we have very limited choices. We can't
Mm,
develop our own packaging in-house because we're three people and
yeah,
we have a tiny business
yeah,
that is trying to move the needle in a positive way. But I think seeing some of these bigger players taking responsibility and ownership and testing things and making progress to me is really exciting. And,
mm,
it shows that we can be working with some of these big companies and they
mm.
can really help also to be a catalyst for change. So I'm remaining very hopeful in that area.
Absolutely. And I think one important thing to note here is, um, and one thing that's very important to me, the people that are working for the big CPGs are consumers like we are as well, right? Nobody actively
Absolutely.
really wants to harm the planet. That's the first thing that we need to acknowledge. And then the second thing is really we as a consumer, you make the decision every single day. Which brand are you
Hmm.
supporting? Are you supporting those brands that take responsibility,
Hmm.
or do you support the existing system? And I think we need to be very um, yeah, it's very important for us consumers to make very conscious decisions, because the thing that hurts the most is losing market share
Yeah.
for the big guys. And I think a lot of the changes that we're seeing in the industry overall is because of public pressure, is because
Hmm.
there were companies like, or there still are, I mean, they're still around, but the ocean cleanup that put so much awareness on the topic of plastic
Hmm.
pollution, of all the NGOs that are
Hmm.
doing great work to raise awareness. And now it's really the point in time to take action, because
Yeah,
plastic pollution is very
exactly.
solvable. It's an economic problem in the end.
Exactly. Yeah,
Yeah.
great.
All right. Perfect. Yeah. I think then we we spoke about a lot of things. Um,
Yeah.
let's leave it with that, and maybe some of the listeners will have questions, and then we can do a round two at some point. It was
Yeah, that would
really
be
a pleasure
awesome.
talking to you, and
So great talking to you too.